We're joined by the Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray. Good morning to you. Welcome to the programme. Can we start by talking about these weight loss jabs that your colleague Wes Streeting wants to promote to get Britain working again? I'm quite shocked by some of the language around all of this, you know, saying that obese patients are holding back Britain's economy. Is that the kind of message that you want to give?
Well, look, I think the message we want to give is that we want to make sure that people who are not working at the moment for any reasons, but obviously obesity is one of them, we want to support them to get back into work. And these weight loss jabs are just one option for helping people to lose weight. There'll obviously be a discussion between a patient and their doctor to work out the best way for them to lose weight. And obviously we need to prevent people from becoming overweight and obese in the first place, which includes making sure children have healthier diets and lifestyles. But I think these weight loss jabs play a role as part of the overall set of interventions that you can make to help people lose weight and to where they can work, get back into work, which is good for them and good for the economy.
What's that going to cost, James?
Well, we'll set out all of the figures in due course, but one of the important investments which was announced yesterday was, I think, £279 million of private sector investment from the company who are making the jabs. And that's a really important thing, obviously, for investing in life sciences in the UK, creating jobs, economic growth, which helps make people better off. But it also means that we can make these jabs here and get access to them. So it's a win-win in terms of investment from the International Investment Summit that we had yesterday.
Is there any part of you that has that sort of nagging concern about people losing weight by injecting themselves with chemicals when we know that eating less, moving more is a free and healthy way to lose weight? And there are people who've been getting in touch with us this morning on the programme, David, for example, who says this really concerns me. It's become the new moneymaker for Big Pharma. How many people should be using them, or is it all just a big cash grab?
Well, I think it's an important option to have within the overall set of options for helping people to lose weight. You know, I don't think there's a single way that you can help tackle overweightness and obesity. I think having these jabs alongside advice about lifestyles, around making sure people are eating more healthily, people are more active, and so on, I think all of it works together. I don't think it's a single solution that will work for everyone in every case. But it is important when doctors are having conversations with their patients that this is one option that they have, because for some people it may be the right solution, and it's important that it's available for them.
And speaking of the right solution, let's talk about national insurance. It's been quite clear over the last few days that the government is intending to increase national insurance for employers. Now, that might be the right solution. That might provide the funds that you need to balance the books. But the trouble is, and the reason that people are really upset about this, is that you pledged in your manifesto not to raise national insurance for working people. Are you seriously trying to tell us that employers are not themselves working people? This idea that you can separate the two has really upset people.
Well, firstly, all the details will be set out in the budget on October the 30th, but the commitment that you referred to in our manifesto was about not increasing taxes on working people, by which we mean national insurance, income tax and VAT. And what's really important for me is to make sure we give businesses as much confidence and as much stability as we can. You know, I mentioned the summit we had yesterday. One of the things we confirmed at the summit was our commitment to cap the rate of corporation tax at its current rate of 25%, which is obviously good news in terms of stability for businesses who are considering making investment decisions. And, you know, what we saw yesterday was businesses from around the world coming to the UK, seeing in us a government who they can do business with, who they can work with, who they can see a stable offer from, and make those investment decisions. And that's why, you know, what we welcomed yesterday was £60 billion of investment, which is twice what the previous government had at their last investment summit. So I think businesses who've been yearning for some stability for many years now see it in the government they have, and together we can get investment to increase and get the economy growing again.
What people are really worried about, James, is where else you're going to be raising money from and who is regarded as a working person. I mean, am I a working person? I earn more than £100,000 a year. Am I a working person?
Well, we said that working people pay national insurance, income tax, and so we've had commitments around those and VAT. But, I can appreciate that over the next few weeks, and indeed over the previous couple of weeks, there's going to be plenty of speculation about the budget. This always happens in the run-up to a budget, and the Chancellor will set out all of the decisions in the round about taxation, spending and welfare on October the 30th. I think, though, it's important to say, there are going to be some difficult choices because it's crucial that we fix the public finances, that we get stability back into the heart of the Treasury and the heart of government. But the reason why we're taking those difficult choices is because the prize is economic growth. If we can get stability back into the economy, we increase investment and we get the economy growing. That's the prize ahead.
I sometimes feel like I'm going crazy doing these interviews. I did a similar one yesterday with your colleague Peter Kyle. You just said, we said working people pay national insurance. Well, among those are employers. And I ask you again, because you dodged the question skillfully, are you saying employers are not working people? Because quite blatantly they are. And I quote to you the chair of the FTSE 100, Sir Nicholas Lyons, who said, whenever you think of taxing employers, you're taxing jobs, you're taxing enterprise, and you have to look at the potential collateral damage. Please try and answer this in as honest a way as you feel you can.
Well, look, I can be very clear that working people pay national insurance, income tax and VAT, and we've pledged not to increase them. And I think you've got to remember the reason why that commitment was so important, because when we were going into the last general election, we'd had a government who had crashed the economy, who had seen living standards decline, squeezed working people. That's why that promise was so important, and that's why it's so important for us to maintain it going into this budget.
Promise. And that's what I'm trying to say to you. And you've boxed yourself. Forgive me, you're breaking your promise, and that's quite clear to everybody, and you're unable to admit it. But the reason you're breaking it is because you've boxed yourself into this corner. And the point is, you could quite easily have raised tax in this way, but you promised you wouldn't.
It's a really important commitment to us to not raise taxes on working people, as I've set out. And I've explained why that was so important to us, given the context of the election and the previous government. But actually, what I really want to emphasise as well is that the way that we make people better off in the long run is by getting the economy growing. And it comes back full circle to what we saw yesterday and that big boost for investment, because it's on the back of that investment we can get the economy growing, make people better off.
James Murray, we've got to leave it there. James Murray is from the Treasury Department. Thank you very much indeed. Now, while the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, has been accused of breaking the party's pledge on tax, as she hinted at increasing national insurance contributions for employers, she sat down with our political editor, Christopher Hope.
The budget, your manifesto says we will not increase national insurance, but you're looking at increasing employers' national insurance. Aren't you breaking your manifesto pledge with that?
Well, you've read our manifesto, and in black and white it said we will not increase taxes on working people. And that was national insurance, income tax and VAT.
Not employers.
That was not in the manifesto.
What else are they going to increase taxes on? That's the thing. There's a whole thing about pensions. If you draw down money from your pension, will they tax that? If you sell your house at a profit, are they going to tax that?
But I actually just think it's the dishonesty of that answer. And I think a lot of people at home will agree. This isn't a political point. They said we're not going to increase national insurance. We can't say, hang on, caveat, little star on that. Only the national insurance that affects employees, but we will increase it for employers. That also affects employees because bosses aren't going to want to spend the money on them.
Exactly.
So is it disingenuous or is it just a necessary fact of life because they have to try and sort out the economy? Let's get the thoughts of Oscar Redrop, who is the former advisor, of course, to Boris Johnson. Duplicity or honesty there?
Well, first of all, Chris there showed the skill of doing a kind of a lightly, softly interview in many ways. I think he just kind of let her slightly expose herself on the tax issue there. I mean, people don't like to feel duped, and it's not a political point. The Conservatives left people feeling like that when it came to certain pledges, that all of a sudden just, you turned out of nowhere.
Like what?
Well, we don't need to go into that.
Well, you brought it up.
I can't remember quite off the top of my head, but I know that there was a general feeling that people felt duped at times by the Conservatives. And this is almost like a sleight of hand magician's trick. Oh, we said there wouldn't be any rise on national insurance. Well, that's exactly what this is. And employers are in complete and understandable anger about this. I mean, people, Keir Starmer can do an investment summit like yesterday with the biggest and best, high-profile, glossy businesses. And that's one thing, and that's really, really good, and that should be commended, that proactivity that the government is showing. But it's the small, medium-sized businesses that will feel so hamstrung like this. I'm sure everyone around this table, people watching at home, people, in the studio, backstage, often your first or second job, it's someone slightly taking a punt on you, and you want to make that process as easy as possible. So I think people will rightly see that interview and think, we're being tricked, we're being duped.
And well, we spoke to Labour about it yesterday, and they were absolutely unapologetic. And, I was making the point that I think it was the boss of Lloyd's yesterday saying this is really bad. If you're trying to talk about boosterism and bringing in business and investment, this isn't going to help. And today, the chair of the FTSE 100, Sir Nicholas Lyons, has said whenever you think of taxing employers, you're taxing jobs, you're taxing enterprise, and you have to look at the potential collateral damage. So why aren't they listening to these voices?
It's exactly the right way to call it. It's a tax on jobs. And just to slightly offset that, I think what they're banking on, the Labour Party, and it's kind of like a ship that they can just squeeze through on this stuff, is a lot of businesses, Labour have said to them over the course of the investment summit, we will kind of grin and bear this tax on jobs if you absolutely kind of blow the doors off on red tape and regulation for us so we can absolutely go for growth in all other aspects and areas. So that's what a few business leaders have come out and said in defence of the government, and probably why they think maybe they can get away with this. But that's not my point. My point is that the small, the SMEs, those kind of like community businesses that are growing, that are not huge, glossy, there'll be some young lad who will not get his first job as a result of this.
They're not blowing the doors off red tape either, because when you look at what's going on, they had that big summit yesterday. They're saying, right, we'll get all you guys in, and then we've got all these employment laws and everything that we're going to throw at you. Unless, of course, you're P&O. That's a whole other story. You really want to do that. And I find the hypocrisy of you either do business with P&O or you don't do business with P&O. And if you are a socialist government representing working people, we should not be dealing with P&O.
You've absolutely hit the nail on the head, and this is symptomatic of the catch-22, kind of almost having two governments, it feels like. It's quite schizophrenic. They're kind of at war with themselves in terms of their identity and what they want to be. Absolutely. He'll sit there with the Google CEO, and it's, he literally had his Tory blue tie on yesterday, that kind of how everyone thinks of the archetypal Tory, and he's talking about, investment and no bureaucracy, red tape. But then there's going to be a budget that comes down the track, and that...
just a few weeks away, and half of the things they've announced are going to be taxed.
Exactly. Where the boardrooms, yes, trade union bosses will probably be quite happy with those reforms, but, the boardrooms that Keir Starmer is so enjoying talking to yesterday will be fuming about it, and that is a government that is not joined up and doesn't quite know what it's doing.
Yeah. Well, the phraseology that I hate are broad shoulders, those with the broadest shoulders, and hard-working people. So if you earn over £100,000 a year, so you're not hard-working, that's the inference all the time. Your money is easy. It's easier got than anybody else's. Let's talk about this fat jab. So there are a lot of people who are not working, and are they automatically fat then?
It does feel a bit like that. And it's interesting, I think there are some things that you can get away with as a Labour politician saying that maybe as a Conservative would feel completely,
and as being fat, one of them.
Just to that point, I actually read The Guardian, who, probably it's fair to say are a Labour kind of leaning newspaper. I do their write-up about this in a completely uncritical way. Just like, good stuff, Mr. Health Secretary. And I did just think, hang on a minute, this would be shown as quite shaming and, unfair and, fattest or...
But is it true? Because the Health Secretary is saying obese patients are holding back Britain's economy, almost holding them responsible for the state of the economy.
So, again, it's this is the frustration with this Labour government, because they get on the right tracks and they identify sometimes the right problems, but the solutions are always, I think, slightly off course. We do have a productivity problem in this country. There are a lot of people that would benefit hugely from being in work that are probably just sat on the outside right now. And I'm not someone who attacks, worklessness. Like Wes Streeting's very comfortable doing. I think there are people who just feel quite detached and would work and can't quite get in the headspace of it. And I think, pointing at them and saying, you just need some fat jabs, you lazy sod, isn't probably the best.
The growth and expansion of this Wegovy Ozempic cure-all for everything. First of all, it was for diabetes, then it was for fat people, then it was for dementia, then it was for heart problems. Now it's for people who are unemployed to save the economy. And let me guess, it's because a very lucrative pharmaceutical deal has come along. They've shaken hands with the health secretary, offered a heck of a load of cash and said, right, we'll give you this if you get all of your patients onto our drug.
Yeah, I think that's the reality. And it's a trial, it's a kind of a 5-year trial. I'm not quite sure that this is something that we're going to see change our lives in society. But, yeah, identify the right problem, Wes, but once again, I don't think the solution's quite up to scratch.
We'll talk again just after 7 o'clock. Thank you very much indeed for your views on things. You can have your say, of course, this morning. Don't forget that. And tell us what you think as well.
Yes, and just over 2 weeks to go until Rachel Reeves delivers her autumn budget. I think we should call it the Halloween budget. Many small businesses in the UK will be waiting to find out what that means for them. And our North West of England reporter, Sophie Reaper, has been sitting down with one small business owner to find out how they're feeling.
Morning. Morning. A bright Lancashire morning and Lauren Maguire is open for business. She owns a small cheese delicatessen on a bustling high street and things are going well. But looking ahead to the budget come the end of this month, Lauren says there's a lot for her to think about.
We've got staff wages, we've got stock, we have to pay for fuel, the rent, the bills, gas and electric keeps going sky high. So there's a lot of factors that, we need to take into consideration. We have to then start thinking about putting our prices up, which is something that I don't really want to do. But again, we still need to be able to make enough money to keep the business going.
As part of their manifesto, Labour promised to outline a so-called business roadmap in their autumn budget. They say it will encourage investment and give businesses the confidence to grow. But after 4 years of owning her own, Lauren is sceptical.
I feel like they always say that just to get them on your side, and then they don't follow through. People want to contribute, as in open up their own business, but there's so many obstacles that they need to overcome, and I just feel like the government sometimes doesn't help.
For small business owners up and down the country, this is a time of uncertainty. As costs increase and disposable income continues to fall, many will look to Labour to help them through this tricky time.
In future, if there's any sort of changes, that is going to be hard to face, we'd welcome any support from the government. I think because there's been that many different changes, I feel like I'm prepared for the worst.
Sophie Reaper, GB News.